The night the woodsman opened his door to 4 shivering figures, the forest was holding its breath. Snow pressed down on the roof like a warning, the wind clawed at the trees, and the loneliness he had carried for years sat heavy in his chest. He did not know their names. He did not know their past. All he knew was that if he turned them away, something inside him that had already survived too much would finally break. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one is watching, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Wild West Tale. Stories like this live because people like you believe they matter. The woodsman had lived alone for so long that silence had become his only companion. His cabin stood deep in the wilderness, far from towns, far from roads, far from memories he did not want to touch. Each morning he rose before the sun, split wood with hands hardened by years of labor, and disappeared into the trees with his axe. He worked until his muscles burned and his mind went numb, because numbness was easier than remembering. When night fell, he returned to a single chair, a single plate, and a fire that crackled but never spoke back. He told himself this was peace, but peace does not ache the way loneliness does. Years earlier, life had taught him how quickly warmth could be taken away. A small home once filled with laughter had been reduced to echoes, and grief had driven him into the forest like a wounded animal seeking a place to hide. The woods did not ask questions. The trees did not pity him. They simply stood, steady and silent, and that was enough. Over time, he convinced himself that he did not need people, that solitude was strength, that his heart was safer when it was closed. That belief was tested on the coldest night of the winter. The storm arrived without mercy. Snow fell thick and fast, erasing trails, swallowing sound. The woodsman had just finished securing his cabin when he heard it, faint at first, almost lost to the wind. A sound that did not belong to the forest. Footsteps. Uneven. Desperate. He stood still, listening, his instincts torn between caution and something deeper, something human. When the knock finally came, it was weak, more a plea than a demand. On his doorstep stood a woman wrapped in a thin, worn coat, her face pale with exhaustion. 3 children clung to her, their eyes wide with fear and cold. They were soaked, trembling, barely standing. The woodsman felt panic rise in him, not because they were dangerous, but because they were vulnerable. Letting them in meant responsibility. It meant connection. It meant opening a door he had nailed shut inside himself. For a long moment, the world balanced on that threshold. Then he stepped aside. He did not speak much as he brought them inside. He fed the fire until the cabin glowed with warmth, wrapped the children in blankets that still smelled faintly of cedar, and placed food on the table with hands that felt strangely unsure. The woman watched him carefully, gratitude and disbelief mixing in her tired eyes. She was a widow, worn down not only by grief but by a world that had offered her very little mercy since her husband's death. She had been traveling with her children, chasing rumors of work, of shelter, of anything better than the hunger and fear they had known. The storm had nearly ended them. That night, they slept while the woodsman sat awake by the fire. The cabin felt different, fuller, louder even in its quiet. The sound of breathing, the small movements of sleep, the simple proof of life around him stirred emotions he had buried deep. He told himself it was temporary. Just one night. Just until the storm passed. Morning came, but they did not leave. The storm had destroyed the path forward, and the woman was ill from days of cold and exhaustion. The woodsman told himself it was only practical to let them stay until she recovered. He showed the children how to sit by the fire safely, how to drink warm broth slowly. He chopped extra wood, hunted more carefully, and noticed, to his surprise, that the work felt lighter. The cabin filled with small, ordinary sounds, footsteps, laughter that slipped out when the children forgot to be afraid, the quiet hum of life returning to a place that had been hollow. Still, fear followed him. He feared their eventual departure, and he feared their staying. He feared growing attached to something he could lose again. The widow sensed this distance, but she did not push. She helped where she could, cleaning, mending, bringing order to a space that had known only survival. The children, curious and resilient, slowly claimed corners of the cabin as their own. A stick became a toy. A window became a source of wonder. They did not see the woodsman as broken. They saw him as safe. As days turned into weeks, the forest changed. Snow melted into streams, light filtered differently through the trees, and something inside the woodsman began to thaw. He found himself watching the children learn, fail, and try again. He found himself listening when the widow spoke of her past, of love lost and strength discovered too late. He found himself laughing, quietly at first, as if afraid the sound might disappear if it grew too loud. Challenges came, as they always do. Food grew scarce. Illness returned in waves. The woodsman struggled with the weight of providing for more than himself, with the constant fear that he was not enough. Old memories resurfaced, reminding him of promises once broken by fate. Some nights, he considered pushing them away for their own good, convincing himself they would be safer elsewhere. But each morning, when he saw the children waiting for him to return from the woods, that resolve weakened. The turning point came when one of the children fell gravely ill. Fever burned, breath came shallow, and the widow's strength nearly failed her. The woodsman carried the child through miles of forest to find medicine, his body pushed beyond exhaustion by something stronger than fear. When he returned and watched life slowly return to that small, fragile frame, he understood a truth he could no longer deny. These people were no longer guests. Their pain was his pain. Their survival mattered to him more than his solitude ever had. From that moment, he stopped pretending. He taught the children what he knew of the woods, not as a survival lesson but as a gift. He listened more than he spoke. He allowed the widow to share the burdens he had carried alone for years. Together, they rebuilt not just the cabin, but a sense of home. It was not perfect. There were arguments, mistakes, and moments of doubt. But there was also warmth, shared meals, and the quiet understanding that none of them had to face the world alone anymore. Seasons passed. The forest bore witness as the children grew stronger, more confident, their laughter echoing through the trees. The widow found peace not in forgetting her past, but in honoring it while building something new. The woodsman discovered that love did not erase loss, but it gave it meaning. He was no longer a man hiding from life. He was part of it again. He never formally decided they were a family. There was no single moment, no grand declaration. It happened in the small things. In the way the children ran to him without hesitation. In the way the widow trusted him with her fears. In the way the cabin felt empty when one of them was gone, even for a short time. He had taken them in to save them from the cold, but they had saved him from a lifetime of loneliness. As years went by, travelers who passed through the woods spoke of a warm cabin hidden among the trees, a place where kindness lived quietly and without expectation. They spoke of a man who once lived alone and now stood surrounded by life. Few knew the full story. Fewer still understood the cost and courage it took to open that door on a storm-filled night. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below what kindness means to you, or share a time when someone changed your life simply by being there. Your words matter, and they might inspire someone who needs hope today. In the end, the woodsman learned a simple truth. Family is not always born. Sometimes, it is found in the moment you choose compassion over fear. Sometimes, it arrives at your door in the middle of a storm, asking for nothing more than a chance to survive. He took them in, believing he was saving strangers. What he gained was a family, and with it, a life that finally felt whole. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and the beauty of unexpected love, please like this video, share it, and let us know in the comments. Subscribe to Wild West Tale to keep stories like this alive, because every act of compassion deserves to be remembered.